Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on managing CISA known exploitable vulnerabilities using CVEM, brought to you by SecPod. I'm Rakesh. I'm also be soon be joining by Meghna, who is a cybersecurity researcher with SecPod Labs. And this webinar will give you a deep dive into how a continuous vulnerability and an exposure management platform can be your strongest defense. It's a platform that doesn't just react to threats, but proactively manages them, ensuring that these vulnerabilities are closed before an attacker can even think of exploiting them. The platform also will enable you to transform your vulnerability management approach from a reactive approach to a proactive approach, which is a crux of a solid security strategy. So we'll be talking more about the platform and how, and more about CISA KEVs and how the platform will help you remediate them so that you are having a much stronger security posture. Just to inform you, you'll also be getting a recorded version of the webinar once it's over. Sorry. Okay, let's now dive in. All right. Now, what do we have in store? This is the agenda for today, wherein we'll be taking a closer look at the common vulnerabilities that has caused the most notorious attacks and which has been exploited by attackers, and these vulnerabilities known as the KEVs. And we'll also be having a brief discussion on vulnerability versus exploitability. We'll also talk about CISA and its catalog and why the CISA KEVs must be integrated into your vulnerability management strategy, and why it is necessary to give you an upper hand over attackers. Now, if you look at the most lethal cyber attacks that has happened across the world, you, these names are quite familiar. There's Be the WannaCry, Lockbit, Black Cat, NotPetya, Blowkeep. These attacks have sent shockwaves across organizations worldwide. And the fact is, they have very chilling similarities. And let's look at them. And what what is unique about them is they are KEVs. Meghna, can you take us through these and help us understand this in greater detail? Meghna, you there? I think we are waiting to get her connected back. Just hold on a second.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yeah, I think we got her back. I think she's back online. I
Hi,
think
yeah. So sorry, had a few mic issues. Um, all right,
yeah.
so about these KEVs. Um, Firstly, every single one of these attacks that we're talking about took
Mhm.
advantage of known exploitable vulnerabilities, short form KEVs. Uh, every single vulnerability that has already been documented, patched, people have been warned about it, that's what's being exploited. The problem is that even though all of this information is out there, many organizations fail to apply the patches in time.
Okay.
Secondly, these attacks, they spread like wildfire. They go
Hmm.
across networks, they exploit the exact same vulnerabilities in every single system they find. And it's
Okay.
like once it set off the spark, there was a chain reaction all over the place, and it took down everything in its path. Now,
Hmm.
each one of these attacks was really, really costly. Of course, money was lost, but it's not just money that's the problem, right? It also impacted trust, reputation, companies that build themselves up. Suddenly, all of that shattered just with these attacks. And operational downtime was also an issue. Uh, these
Very.
large corporations that are known to so many people were all just brought down to their knees. And it really shows you that even the biggest players can be vulnerable if they don't take the right precautions.
That's indeed scary. So, what is the key? Well, what can we take away from this?
Well, every single one of these attacks, the reason they were able to be this successful is because the vulnerabilities were both known and unpatched. We
That's
really
it.
have to remind ourselves that sometimes the best defense is the simplest one. If you see a patch, you have to update your system. You keep seeing all of these, Windows updates that come on to your laptop, and you're like, maybe I can just do that later. It's okay if I don't do it right now. And that's how they get you. You can't ignore those patches.
So, the bottom line is it's plain survival. You need to patch to survive this.
Exactly, exactly. It's about survival in our digital world where these attackers, they're always looking for the simplest, the easiest way in. It's like you're opening your door and you're saying, you walk right in. They don't have to find any other way. So you have to fix these simple vulnerabilities as soon as you can.
That's very interesting. So, what we understand from what Meghna said now is, KVs are very dangerous. They are just the low-hanging fruits, though they are, very well known and documented. These are what we call as known exploitable vulnerabilities. So, why, Meghna? Why do you think they are the most dangerous ones among the lot?
So here's the deal. As we said earlier, KVs are vulnerabilities that have already been discovered, documented, and made public. Sure, that means that we know how to patch them early on, but it also means that attackers have all of the information at their fingertips. Usually, if attackers don't know much about a vulnerability, there's very limited information available online, they're going to have to figure out their own code, write their own exploits, spend a lot of time trying to figure this out. But with KEVs, this information's already there. It's readily available. They can just grab that information and use it to cause problems. So if you don't prioritize fixing vulnerabilities like this, as I said, you're basically saying walk right through my door. It's open. You can help yourself. So you cannot be complacent. KEVs can affect any device, anywhere, any industry.
So there's no way, but we just have to go and fix them. That's the key, right?
Pretty much, the best defense is always a strong offense, right? You don't let the attackers take the easy way in.
That's true. So we need to avoid complacency at all costs, because these KEVs can affect all devices and industry sectors. It's not with respect to a one particular industry or a one particular device. It can affect any device or industry. So there is no room for any complacency here. We have to go and fix them.
Exactly. You always have to stay alert.
That's true. All right. So here we have a very interesting chart, and wherein we have been talking about vulnerability and exploits. Now let's take a more closer look at what these are. I know, Meghna, you will be the right person to help us through this.
Yeah, of course. So, what a vulnerability is any weakness or any sort of flaw in your system. Like, for example, as we said, you don't patch your software, you don't configure some of your settings properly, or even, you set a really weak password, something that's super easy to remember. Like, you get tired, you think, I should set my phone password as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Like, that's the kind of things that attackers are looking for. That's the kind of opening. And the other word that we use, exploitability, basically an attacker finds this weakness and has to be able to use it to their advantage. You can't just find any weakness and use it, right? It's whether this specific weakness can actually be easily turned into a full blown breach. Not all vulnerabilities can. If the vulnerability is the potential that a dangerous attack can happen, the exploitability is how easily an attacker can use it to realize that potential.
That's well said. So you have plenty of them around. You have plenty of vulnerabilities around. Are they all created equal? I mean, are they all the same?
Definitely not. There's plenty of vulnerabilities that might exist for a really long time before anyone ever decides to exploit it. It could also be the case that some vulnerability is used the instant it's discovered, like within a few seconds, hours, whatever. The impact of these vulnerabilities being exploited could be short term if the person in question finds them and patches them quickly, or it could stay there. It could stay within your system unpatched, like a ticking time bomb, especially if it's a 0 day. That's scary.
So how the picture you painted is indeed dangerous. So how do you defend? What's the way to defend?
Well, there's
How do
two
you defend?
things. Yeah. One of them is that you have to be fast, and secondly, you have to be precise. You need to use vulnerability scanners that are high speed to be able to quickly catch these cracks, keep track of databases with exploits so you can stay ahead of attackers and you can find these things first.
Okay.
And based on the exploitability, how easily these things can be exploited, you prioritize your response to each of them.
No, so you can say that these vulnerabilities, based on their ability to get exploited and how exposed they are, you can prioritize our remediation, and then these vulnerabilities can easily be fixed.
Exactly. You figure out what's the most dangerous and you crack down on that first.
Let me just look at the table again, and here we have some very interesting questions that has been posed to understand the characteristics of each. Now, if you look at some of the examples of vulnerability, that could be bad software, misconfigured system, weak passwords, human errors, design flaws, and exploitability can be automated tools, scripts, or malicious software. Now, the duration of impact of vulnerability exists until it is identified and remediated through patching or through any patching or a configuration change. Whereas exploitability can be a short-term activity or long-term if the zero-day exploit remains unknown, and that makes it more dangerous. Now, how do you detect them? As Meghna said, we need to employ, the only way is to employ a high-speed scanner with scan speeds of close to 5 minutes, which can just, these scanners can, have scan speeds which can scan the entire IT infrastructure, irrespective of number of assets you have in just 5 minutes. I mean, that's amazing. And exploitability, and if you want to detect and exploit, that's through vulnerability intelligence suites and large vulnerability intelligence suites and exploit monitoring, exploit databases. Best way to respond is if you want to respond to vulnerability, you need to prioritize and remediate them. And exploitability is to constantly and continuously assess endpoint security controls, reduce exposures and deviations, and continuously monitor system health. And when you look at these two holistically, when you are able to handle them together, you can be sure that your security posture is going to shoot up. All right. Now, now here we have now we need someone to help us, right? And that's when CISA comes to our rescue. Now, CISA helps us in maneuvering these vulnerabilities. So, Meghna, can you tell us more about CISA and what it does and how it helps us?
Yes. Checking in again. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right, lovely. So, firstly, CISA maintains a catalog of KEVs, which is basically the ultimate roadmap to vulnerabilities that hackers are exploiting actively. Looking at this, we can always be a step ahead of them because now we know what's being actively exploited. We know how to fix that. Um, CISA helps in managing risks by using their recommendations. The overshadowing risk is it's less scary. What they do is they guide you to manage these risks, mitigate them, and since they give you the understanding about these vulnerabilities, you can make informed decisions. You can also improve your cyber readiness. What this means is CISA gives you a very in depth examination of vulnerabilities, the context behind them, any additional information required. It basically helps you not just survive, but also thrive in the cyber landscape. And because of all of these things, you can take proactive measures and spot risks yourselves. That's what CISA gives you, right? A set of tips and best practices that will help you identify these vulnerabilities early on. They give you enough information to look at these things, conduct your own analysis, and get you cyber ready yourself.
Correct, correct.
Aside from this, I'm sure you've heard of ransomware. It's basically every organization's worst nightmare. But CISA has an initiative called RVWP. It's a program that focuses on the weaknesses that these ransomware attacks exploit. It basically says, hey, here's a specific type of weakness that can be used to deliver ransomware. Be careful. So you can proactively address vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and weaknesses that are usually used by ransomware attacks.
That's very informative. So let's understand this catalog which CISA publishes. How you did mention about the catalog. Yeah, can you explain its strategic value in the security program of any enterprise?
Well, so you should think of it as like a list of vulnerabilities. It's like carefully curated. It's always up to date. It's very essential. It's not just a list, you know. They handpick all of the extremely dangerous vulnerabilities that hackers are exploiting right now. They put them together, and you basically have to check this if you want to stay ahead in the game. Keep yourself ahead of any attacker that's exploiting these things. It's also really crucial for vulnerability management because of how reliable and comprehensive it is. If you're not going to be using this, you're basically missing out on a key piece of the security puzzle. It's always changing, always updated based on any new information that comes in. And so, if there's a new threat, attackers will most likely not know about it before you if you check this catalog. Uh, Another thing it does is it simplifies prioritization and remediation. It gives you a very clear list of vulnerabilities that need your attention right now. And it
Mhm.
says you have to remediate this by this time or you're in trouble.
Mm.
So it does a lot of the work for you. And it also offers steps even to mitigate this. Um, you can basically reduce the time and impact of potential breaches. And as I've said multiple times, you're always going to be one step ahead of attackers by using it. And, just being reactive isn't enough. You can't just see something being exploited and then say, oh, now I'm going to work on this. The CISA catalog is very, very important for building a strong security posture. Every vulnerability gets a unique ID called a CVE, and it shows you evidence that it's being exploited and gives you a solid list of things you can do to remediate.
Mm. Oh, it's true because it can't get more comprehensive than this. I mean, this is a catalog that every enterprise must refer to ensure that they are ahead of the game. That's very interesting.
Exactly.
So let's get more about CISA KV catalog. Meghna, you spoke about the CISA catalog and the KEVs which get listed there. Can you take us more about and give us a bigger picture so that we get our much more better have a better opinion about it and ensure that our opinions are updated.
Of course. Knowing more about the KEVs, their characteristics, their attributes can really, really help you. In this slide, you can see that we have a few.
Hmm.
Number one, the KEVs, they're a dynamic resource. It doesn't only track vulnerabilities, but it also gives you the exact IDs that are assigned to each vulnerabilities, the CV, as I said before, so you
Correct.
can pinpoint potential risks. Secondly, it gives you very, very detailed information about the software that's affected, the systems that are affected, um, along with how much damage, how much impact exploitation can cause. So you can look at it, you can see the risk level, you can see, oh, we use these systems, we use this software, and this is how much damage it could cause. And you can take informed actions to protect whatever assets you have.
Correct.
Thirdly, there's something called an attack vector. They're basically passages that attackers use to infiltrate your systems. Within the KEV catalog, there's a lot of information on these entry points or vectors, which tell you where the vulnerabilities in your systems are. And once you know that, you can take steps to protect those specific ones, which means you can be very efficient about the way you remediate.
Hmm.
The catalog also provides insights into specific techniques that cyber criminals use. If you understand the way that the cyber criminals operate, then you can take measures to prevent attacks before they even happen.
Hmm.
Furthermore, you get the best practices and recommendations right in your hand. They give it to you straight up. It's basically like you go through this catalog and you have a seasoned cybersecurity expert right by you, taking you through all of the complex parts of vulnerability management that you wouldn't know about otherwise.
Okay. Okay.
And also, the catalog isn't just a standalone tool, right? You can integrate it with plenty of different things: threat intelligence feeds, VM platforms, SIEMs. This kind of integration being possible, it makes proactive vulnerability management way more efficient and effective. The catalog also very clearly mentions when a vulnerability was found, disclosed, and added to the catalog itself. Basically, knowing this information helps you check the maturity of available patches and also, again, prioritize their application. So you can make sure that the things that are most likely to be exploited within your system are fixed, are protected. And you're, again, always a step ahead of the attackers. Lastly, the catalog provides a lot of details about the things that vulnerabilities impact. the systems, specific versions. So again, as I said before, you can take a look at what you have in your assets, and you can take targeted action to protect them.
That's quite detailed. Now, I have a question here. Probably I will just bring it here. Um, how do we bring more control and get more clarity on these KVs? Because there seems to be quite a few around. I mean, and they're quite dangerous. Now, I want more control and clarity. Now, how do I bring it?
Yeah. So basically, the ability to see every single part of our infrastructure and knowing how to control these things, definitely very, very crucial. This is where we have something called CWE mapping.
Okay.
So what CWE is,
So what is it? Can you? Okay, go ahead. Anyway, you asked the same question.
yeah, so what CWE is, it stands for Common Weakness Enumeration. It's pretty much your blueprint. It categorizes and describes common security weaknesses that make all of these exploits possible. If you map the CWEs with the
Okay.
KEVs, you can see exactly where each of these weaknesses are, and you can understand which of these flaws a hacker might be likely to exploit. I mean,
Okay.
you know that a vulnerability exists, sure, that's one thing, but you have to understand why it exists. That's 100% a game changer.
Correct.
If you map them, it allows you to uncover the weaknesses that lead to exploitation in the first place.
That's interesting. So, what about precision? How do I, when I mean precision, is how do I prioritize those which has more risk? Because there are plenty of them around. I want to ensure that the ones that are having causing the more risks are prioritized. How do I do that?
Well, CWEs are very, very convenient for this kind of thing. Each entry for a CWE has an analysis score. If the score goes higher, then the risk posed by the vulnerability is greater. By looking at a scoring system like this, you can kind of prioritize, again, prioritize your security efforts so you can focus on the most critical weaknesses first.
So, how do I get a good picture of these weaknesses? What's way out?
That's where patterns come in. If you look at the types of patterns when within weaknesses that are most frequently exploited, like you go through all of the vulnerabilities, all of the attacks, and you see, there's some weaknesses that are popping up very frequently in these attacks. If you look at that, you can develop targeted mitigation strategies. Also, with the insights gained from the CWE mappings, you can like carefully tailor your security strategies to address the root cause. You go deep in, you address the root cause. This kind of proactive approach, it doesn't just improve your security posture, but it makes your defenses way, way stronger.
That's interesting. So let's get to know more about this. You were talking about mapping. So how do I get to understand, that CW addresses why KVs are dangerous? Can you take us through the that and the mapping aspect of things?
Yeah, of course. KVs are the vulnerabilities that are definitely most likely to be exploited. But it just looking at these vulnerabilities and going ahead and mitigating them, it doesn't help you understand why they're dangerous in the first place, right? That's
Okay.
where the CWE comes in.
Okay.
So on this slide, you can see that when we map KEVs with CWEs, you're getting a very, very detailed explanation of every single risk on our map. So you actually know how the vulnerabilities work, and you can make more informed decisions about them because it doesn't just tell you where the vulnerabilities are, but also the root causes behind them. So you now you can fix the underlying issues that make them exploitable in the first place. Like imagine in your system there's like a glaring weakness, and because of that weakness, multiple vulnerabilities come up. Instead of just going ahead and fixing every single vulnerability as it comes up, wouldn't it be better to fix the weakness in the first place so these vulnerabilities don't come up at all?
So what you're saying is CWE categorizes and describes security weaknesses. That's what the tree maps chart to the right is showing, right?
Correct, correct. If you look at that tree map chart, it basically shows you the CWE top 10 KEV vulnerabilities, and it gives you the analysis scores for all of them. It tells you the different kinds of flaws that can exist. And by looking at this sort of categorization, I spoke about patterns before. You can use this to see patterns in vulnerabilities, which means it's now easier to protect where the next cyber threat might come from. So now you're still saying so many steps ahead of the attackers because you know where the threat might come from before it even comes. This categorization is based on the weaknesses, the CWEs, that make the exploit possible.
Mhm.
CWEs basically break down the specific weaknesses that hackers exploit. It's not just about labeling, it's about understanding the how and the why. When we know the type of weakness, we can kind of start to understand how attackers might approach an attack because you know where the weakness is, you know what the attacker is going to try to target, and it keeps you ahead of them defending against it.
Great, great. So I also see a pie chart to the left, which shows the, the, the CWE mappings by category and the root causes behind attacks.
Yeah, once you've identified the root causes, you can look at them, you can analyze them, and that will help you gain way deeper insights into the methods that attackers use. So, this again helps you be proactive and you can strengthen your defenses where they're needed the most.
Right. So moving here, I think this slide substantiates what you just said. When we examine the CVEs using the CWE categories, we gain more clarity and visibility and control, right?
Yeah, exactly. It gives you required information and it helps you identify flaws in the software or the hardware that leads to these vulnerabilities. And even more importantly than all of that, I can't like emphasize the importance of patterns enough. We will be able to see the patterns and the types of weaknesses that are most frequently exploited. Knowing this, we can prioritize our security efforts and drive mitigation strategies because we now know the root causes. And when we know the context of the CWEs, the weaknesses, we can enhance our security posture.
It's true because staying in the same slide, more deeper we are, relating or connecting the CBEs with CWE categories, it helps us understand the weakness patterns, and there is more clarity on what we need to do next. I mean, that's indeed a very powerful step in strengthening our security posture, right? That's really.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, now we are stepping into trying to get some answers to this problem of CISA KVs. Now we know that the danger posed by KVs, the type of KVs, how to categorize, prioritize them. Now it's time to find some answers on how to prevent them proactively. So Meghna, why should I go in for a platform, like CVEM, to prevent KEVs, and why is it important? Why is CVEM the answer to CISA KEVs? Can you
Well,
take?
what a CVM platform does, it basically addresses these vulnerabilities from a weakness perspective in the first place. We've been talking about how important weaknesses are this entire time. A CVEM platform really, really helps you with that. Every single attacker wants to leverage some sort of weakness to get into your systems.
Mhm.
And we term these weaknesses as vulnerabilities, right? when these vulnerabilities are exposed, it becomes a potential threat. So,
Correct.
knowing this, what a CVEM platform does is first, it establishes a governance focused approach to vulnerability management. What does that mean? So, the CVM platform adapts and scales very, very effortlessly. Basically, make sure that when you need tools to fortify or mitigate something, you have them at your disposal. The platform also helps you understand your security maturity, and it highlights whatever areas need to be improved.
Okay.
So you can look at that and you can make way smarter and more informed moves. The platform also allows you to prioritize vulnerabilities based on how critical they are. Again, it gives you this information at your disposal. Like, you don't need to take the time to come up with all of this yourself. And so your business can focus on what matters most just by looking at this information. Secondly, you can adopt a more interdisciplinary approach to vulnerability management. Using this kind of platform, it's you can really, really quickly scan your entire IT environment because it's that fast. You can spot vulnerabilities in just 5 minutes. That's very quick. It's way before any of these vulnerabilities will ever become a real problem. It also provides you with a framework called CISA SSVC. Um, this helps you prioritize your vulnerabilities again. So you'll notice you know exactly which vulnerabilities you want to address immediately and which can maybe wait for a little bit of time.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah.
And finally, you can make sure that your Windows, Mac OS, Linux operating systems, 550 plus industry standard applications are all patched and secure. So there's so many things it covers.
Wow, that's very comprehensive. So, is it complete in itself? So you're saying that this is a complete platform in itself, and you don't need anything else to fix those KVs.
Pretty much. I mean, it has 7 modules, such as like asset exposure, anomaly detection, vulnerability management, compliance management, risk prioritization, patch management, endpoint management. Like, that's a lot of things. All of these modules are driven by this one agent. All you need is this platform.
Right. I'm eager to know about this more. So let's quickly uh, try to understand, the why CVEM platforms is a need of the hour. Now, I would suggest that it's got for three fundamental reasons. One is a strategic reason, one is an execution reason, and third is a technical reason. And if you look at the strategic reasons, one is a large vulnerability backlogs, and these backlogs have crept up to the large scale modernization of infrastructure, business expansion, and digital transformation, due to which there are many assets that gets added, many software gets added, and the most of the softwares don't get passed due to lack of automation and siloed tools, and due to which there's a huge burgeoning of vulnerabilities. Is one of the strategic reasons that you need, and one of the most primary reasons. Second being, most companies do have a reactive approach to security. This again to lack of automation in their vulnerability management processes, due to which it takes a lot of time to scan and to really find out where exactly the vulnerability or the misconfiguration risk lies in the entire IT infrastructure. And that's the second reason. The third being there's a slack in innovation. Companies find it very difficult to innovate and keep pace with the threat landscape, which is constantly evolving, and it's not easy to stay updated in this, and unless you're innovating at great speeds. And the next is the inability to quantify risks to the board. This again due to a reactive approach to security and lack of an integrated platform. They find it really hard to quantify the outcomes, and the type of risks that they are facing in the security in their IT infrastructure. And there is extreme difficulty in cost control because of silo tools, because you do not know how many more tools you need to fix vulnerabilities in your environment. And next is the security uncertainty. As I told you, the threat landscape is constantly evolving. You're not sure about what's going to happen next. The uncertainty is only causing more headaches. So that's another reason. Next is inability to meet large-scale digital disruptions, which again is adding more vulnerabilities to the environment. The last but not the least strategic reason would be the inability to improve security operations to reduce redundancies. I mean, that the last reason is so impactful that it can really play a big role in increasing risks and reducing the efficacy of risk assessments. And the next point why you need a CVM platform is high cost of available tools. CVM platform is so affordable that it is available in one integrated platform. As we discussed in the previous slide, you get everything in one platform. You don't need to make additional investments, be it in plugins or any of the content packs which most vendors offer. Lack of qualified staff. You don't need qualified staff to run this because it's entirely automated. Silo tools. Silo tools, as I told you earlier, is a big worry among enterprise security teams, IT and security teams. Whereas when you talk about a CVM platform, it's completely integrated. Lack of accurate, speedy remediation. CVM platform has, as what I told earlier, can scan in 5 minutes, and the speed at which you can remediate is in minutes, not in months, right? It's minutes, and high rate of false positives. Now, this again is a big challenge because because lack of accuracy, and there is lack of precision in the way most of the siloed uh, tools does the scanning, because it takes hours and hours to scan entire IT infrastructure, and most tools don't have a large vulnerability database integrated into their systems, and this caused a higher level of false positives, be it in scanning and detection particularly. Speed of availability is another big concern. The speed at which most exploits are available. Companies cannot afford to have longer scan times. They need to scan quickly, and they need to fix these KEVs quickly. That's what we mentioned earlier. These CVM platform can scan in a matter of minutes and remediate in minutes too. You most silo tools cannot give you an audit status immediately, right? If you want it immediately, it's very difficult to get. Whereas when you talk about a CVM platform, you can customize your compliance reports and get your audit status, be it your patching status, be it a detection status, be it your compliance status, be it your asset discovery status. You can get reports of your choice. And more importantly, most reports are very difficult to comprehend and difficult to read for the C-suite. But when you talk about a CVM platform, it's easy to read, and you can make faster and informed decisions. When you look at the technical reason um, for adopting a CVM platform is, first and foremost, is inability to get clarity of asset inventory, right? You look at a CVM platform, you can get your assets, the entire asset inventory scans, and the software bill of materials at your fingertips in minutes at lightning speeds. Lack of an automated integrated platform. That's another reasons why you need a CVM platform. Most of the vulnerability management processes that is happening in enterprises are happening in a very siloed manner, and you need multiple people to manage it. One tool does the scanning, second tool does the detection. You need another tool for remediation, another tool for compliance, another tool for asset discovery. So it's a laborious process. Whereas when you talk about CVM platform, everything happens in one through one agent, and you get it done in minutes. And most tools use legacy risk prioritization methods, CVSS methods. But when you talk about a CVM platform, you have the power of SSVC prioritization at your fingertips, and you get your vulnerabilities prioritized based on your business context. So it's extremely contextualized to your environment, and that ensures that there are no false positives, and you are fixing what is actually impacting your business. And the next is they lack speed, as I told you earlier, emphasizing it again here. The lack of speed and continuous. Most of the tools done, periodic scans. They're not continuous, and due to which you cannot in this fast evolving threat landscape, you cannot run quarterly, monthly scans or quarterly scans or weekly. You need to continuously run it every day and at extremely high speeds to ensure that you are on top of the game. And the next is lack of controls that go beyond point. You just can't focus only on patching to fix your risk. You need a strong post anomaly detection tool, and also you need a strong endpoint management tool to ensure that all the security controls within the endpoint is functioning well and fine, so that every layer of the defense is functioning, and it is ready to take on any attack. So that's also equally important. Last but not the least, the technical reason is most tools take, has very, very laborious and cumbersome deployment methods. And mind you, it gets SanerNow can be deployed in minutes, in 2 to 3 minutes. It's a cloud-based platform, and you can just get installed in minutes, get installed in 2 minutes, and scan your entire infrastructure in 5 minutes. So that's the speed at which this platform can function. Right? I mean, that should have given you enough clarity as to why CVEM platform is an imperative, in your vulnerability management programs. So, Meghna, when we saw the fundamental reasons for owning a CVM platform, can you take us through why it is a smarter or a faster way to make vulnerability management programs more effective and predictable?
Yes. Okay. So to break down why it's this crucial, firstly, it's risk based. What a CVM platform does is it doesn't just give you like a list of vulnerabilities, right? It has to first evaluate them based on the data that it has, and then it assumes how likely each vulnerability is to be exploited based on information that it's collected, and it tells you, hey, here's a ranking of vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities will probably are probably more likely to be exploited than others because of things like the impact, how easy it is, exploitability, etc., etc. And by looking at this, your organization can focus all of your resources where it matters most, and you can see the greatest risks to your organization and focus your efforts there. Secondly, the information that it gives you is very, very comprehensive. It looks at your entire organization and it gives you a full view of the risk posed. Based on real world threats, it shows you which vulnerabilities should be prioritized, and it makes sure that there is transparency throughout your entire security system. And with this sort of platform, you can like be sure that you don't have to waste any time or money on things like CISA, KEV, content packs, plugins, anything else that might give you all of this information, because it's all there. It's all on the platform. You don't need anything more. Thirdly, it's very, very robust. It gives you a precise risk assessment, which means that it factors in the impact on your business, the relevance to any stakeholders that might be involved, and make sure that you're not just patching your system, you're keeping your entire system reinforced in its most critical areas. And finally, it's incredibly decisive. Knowing all of this information, seeing how comprehensively it's giving it to you, you're going to be able to make way more informed decisions much faster. It's making sure that your organization doesn't develop false sense of security either, because you know how things go, right? Things have worked a certain way in your company for many years, and you think, oh, it's worked fine until now. We don't really need to change things. And then you look back at it and you see that half of the software you're using is end of life. It's very, very scary. But
Mm.
with the CVM platform, it gives you very, very clear, actionable insights. You can look at these things, you can work on them immediately. You know where to act, you know how to keep your defenses up, you know what's going wrong, and you know how to fix it.
Mm, that's very insightful.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what sort of approach should enterprises take for vulnerability management? What do you think is the right approach they should be adopting?
So on this slide, you can see it to the left, right? There's a model that is being used right now, which is really outdated. The only thing this model does is it makes organizations way more vulnerable. This model, it keeps prevention, as you can see, the last priority at the very bottom. It's the final thing they do. This means that their approach to security is reactive. They firstly try to detect they try to detect an attack, and then they respond. Um, this means that they are going to be completely unable to visualize and discover assets that have KEVs, because prevention is at
Mhm.
the very, very end.
Okay.
So instead of this, what they should be doing is following the model on the right, which is way more of a proactive approach to vulnerability management. What this does is it completely flips the model. It, instead of keeping prevention as the last priority, it is now the first priority. This is what CVEM does. It makes sure that it prevents threats before they're ever detected. The model is continuous, proactive, automated, which means organizations can very quickly identify, prioritize, and fix these KVs before they cause any danger at all. Because, um, obviously, if you have a vulnerability, instead of waiting for an attack to come in and then saying, okay, I'm stopping the attack now, it's so much better to just fix this vulnerability before the attack gets there at all. That's what this platform helps you do.
Mm, that's what that's the right way to approach.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So, Meghna, what is it that in the platform that enables it to remediate KVs faster?
So what it does is it has a framework called the SSVC prioritization framework. This helps it gain control over the KEVs. So when you're talking about prioritization, you want to filter through all the noise, right? You want to look at what's most important to you, what matters most to your organization, instead of seeing all of these alerts and being super overwhelmed, because there's so many problems. There's so many problems. Which one do I fix? So SSVC helps you focus on the KEVs that are most critical to your specific environment. Because again, for different organizations, things
Mhm.
that you prioritize might be very different. There might be some vulnerabilities that have way more of an impact on your organization, but maybe not to another one, right? So
Mhm. Right.
that's what this framework does.
So so these vulnerabilities are not all created equal.
Yeah, of course. That's exactly what it is. Not all vulnerabilities will be created equal, and neither are all organizations. As I was saying before, to expand on that, uh, for example, what's a top priority for a hospital may not be as urgent for a financial institution. SSVC is tailoring itself to your organization's needs specifically. It takes into account factors like, say, the impact on your business and the exploitability of a vulnerability, And this lets you make decisions that are immediately relevant to your specific situation.
That's interesting because that also helps us take more faster and decisive actions. Right? So,
Exactly. It's all about timing. A KEV can sit unaddressed in your system for a really long time. And at that point, the risk becomes much, much greater because if a KEV is just there, it's been there for multiple years. I talked about this earlier, but you'd think things have been working for this long. Why do I need to change my approach now? Well, you'll want to fix these things immediately, and the SSVC framework really speeds up that decision making process by giving you actionable insights. It tells you, here's how I determine whether to patch, mitigate, or keep monitoring a vulnerability based on how severe it is and how relevant it is at this specific time. You
mm,
can focus your efforts and act as fast and effectively as possible to make sure
mm,
your organization is the safest it can be.
that's indeed good because here we can avoid this will help us avoid the guesswork, which goes on. It's which one to do, which one to go after first.
Right, because all of the information is right there.
Mm,
The biggest challenge in managing vulnerabilities is deciding where you can start. There's
correct.
so many vulnerabilities out there. It's very easy for organizations to feel like you're playing a never-ending game of whack-a-mole.
Mm,
SSVC, it completely takes the guesswork out of the equation. You no longer have to look at all of these different vulnerabilities and think, oh, maybe I should start with this. This looks like it could impact something, so I should try doing that. No. SSVC just hands you everything straight up. It categorizes these vulnerabilities based on real world factors that will matter to your organization. And it makes sure that by having all this information ready, your team can stay focused on what's really important. So your defenses are always strong and your responses are always as quick as they can be.
that's very important. And so this SSVC framework is what which makes the CVM platform so unique, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So now here is a table wherein shows a comparison between sorry between existing silo tools and the next practice of CVM tools. Which helps the CVM, which helps enterprises sustain their cyber resilience. Let's take a quick look at this. No, now, I think we discussed this earlier, but just re-emphasizing it here. Existing practice of silo tools. If you look at the first one, it has got long episodic scan times. It's not continuous. Whereas, look at the practice of CVM tools, it's automated, on demand, and continuous. When you look at silo tools, it's extremely reactive, doesn't cover the entire attack surface. Whereas CVM tools, it's very proactive. It scans it is infrastructure in 5 minutes, endpoint servers, virtual machines, cloud networks, everything. It's very difficult to visualize and discover assets having KVs when you're using a silo tool. But CVM tool, you get very clear visualizations of where the vulnerability presence is, precise scans. You ensure that there are no false positives on it, and you can be assured of that. There is no built-in vulnerability database, as I mentioned earlier. Here you get a built-in vulnerability database with more than 190,000 vulnerability checks, and which is updated continuously every day. And in silo tools, you have manual interventions. And you got plenty of IT disruptions, especially during the patching and the maintenance work happens. Whereas here it's fully automated. There is no business disruptions, and the business goes on as usual. When it comes to silo tools, you have CVS's prioritization methods, as you mentioned, as CVEM has got SSVC prioritization methods. And in silo tools, you don't have immediate patch availability. You have immediate patch availability within 24 hours of release in a CVM tool. And one of the most critical aspects in a silo tools, you cannot test and approve patches before deployment. And mind you, in CVM tools, you can test and approve patches before deployment, and this is very crucial in the BFSI space, which is the banking, financial services, and insurance space, wherein they want to test the patches before deployment because they want control while deploying patches because they don't want critical systems to be patched. They want only certain system to be patched, and they're they're okay to patch certain systems later. So testing and approval of patches is very critical in an industry like banking. So that happens. You can do that with a CVM tool. And in Silo tool, the next most critical thing is that you cannot roll back patches or identify missing patches. Whereas in a CVEM tool, you can roll back patches even after installation, or identify the missing patches. So these are some of the very clear differentiations and advantages of a CVEM tool when compared to some of the existing practices of siloed tools which are currently available in the market. So you can clearly see the edge which the CVEM tool offers. Now, when we started this presentation, we did go through these. We just saw these attacks. WannaCry, Lockbit, Black Cat, NotPetya, Bluekey. Now these are you know, ransomwares which has wreaked havoc, and these are some of the vulnerabilities that cause these attacks. And mind you, using a CVM tool, we could have easily prevented these attacks and the kind of the damage that it caused. What do you think, Meghna? What's your views on this? I mean, you must be having some interesting views on it.
Yes,
Meghna?
of course. Like, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, uh, what I think is this kind of platform. If you look at all of these different kinds of ransomware, and you see the kinds of impact it's caused in the past, the comprehensive information that the CVM platform provides you with is super helpful to mitigate these kinds of things. Because if you try to like deal with these things without having all of this comprehensive information, then you'd be in a bit of a dilemma because it's harder for you to notice patterns. It's harder for you to see where the attacks might be coming from, and like being able to prepare yourself against all of these uh, weaknesses. It's makes things so much more challenging for each organization.
True, true, true. So if you look at if we take a quick look at how a CVM platform can fix, you can scan, identify all the systems that are susceptible to the CVE, right? Every system, which will be it on-prem or remote, within the corporate network or outside corporate. You can scan all the systems. You can prioritize your remediation efforts based on the criticality of affected assets and the impact of exploitation. And note the systems with specific configurations that make them vulnerable. This is possible, through our asset discovery tool. You can pinpoint critical assets that need immediate attention. You can set up automated alerts to notify relevant stakeholders. So you can specify those alerts so that you can be sure that the CVEs needs to be fixed. That's the kind of readiness that this platform helps you to be. Test the patches in a controlled environment before full scale deployment. You can deploy the necessary patches to remediate the CVE, schedule regular patch updates to ensure all systems are protected. You based on the system categories, you can schedule these patching updates. You can establish a security baseline configuration and monitor any security deviation. So any anomalies within the network, you can quickly normalize it and identify and remediate unusual or unauthorized changes in system configuration. This again is possible through the post anomaly module. You can implement endpoint protection controls to safeguard against exploitation. This is possible with our endpoint management tool. Can generate compliance report to meet any regulatory needs and ensure continuous monitoring of IT infrastructure to ensure the resilience is stable even after patching. So 24 by 7, this is a continuous process. So when you have such a powerful platform, you can be sure that these attacks have almost zero chance of entering your systems or your infrastructure. So that brings us to the end of this webinar, and we would like to have some questions from your end. So please post your questions. We'll be glad to answer them. All right, looks like we don't have many questions here. Just in case you would like to know more about the CVEM solution and how a CVEM solution can help prevent cyber attacks in a continuous and an automated manner, please do visit www.secpod.com or write to us at info@secpod.com. We would be glad to answer all your questions and ensure that you get the right solution to protect your security infrastructure. Thank you, Meghna. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you so much. It was lovely speaking to you about this, and I hope everyone watching enjoyed.
Sure. Thank you all. Thank you for your time, and you all have a nice evening and the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.